Weather announcements. Anybody? Nothing new. Okay. Well, Pastor Dave Bryan was born and raised in Idaho, lovely state. He and his family moved here to Yuba City in 1987. He has since led the ministry team here at the Church of Glad Tidings, and this room is a blessing to us. And he's unafraid to address the evil of the government, local agencies to the presidency, because they are evil, they are liars, and America is angry at them. And is opposing, including Obama's agenda to change America. He's an avid horseman and a supporter of the Second Amendment. Now, it's time to roar, so let's hear us roar, huh? Roar! Let's hear it from Pastor Dave.
Okay, well, technical difficulties. I'm trying to get some slides up here if we can, but I can talk to you for a while anyway. How long do these meetings go? How about that? Anyway, okay, let me just share where I feel like we're at. First of all, I don't know what your worldview here is, but you really need to sort out your worldview, because the problems that we're having is that powerful people are trying to erase they're trying to erase national boundaries to make a global government. And I know some of you are following this a lot and others aren't. But I'm a Christian. I don't know if you are or aren't, but this is a home game for me tonight. So I'm just going to tell you how I feel about stuff. I'm not ashamed to be a Christian, and I'm not bashful about telling people how I feel about that. I led prayer at the State of Jefferson meeting, and some guy came up and said, I was just offended that you used the name of Jesus Christ. I said, well, either get over it or don't hang around me. That's how I feel. I said, he said, well, I'm an agnostic. And I said, yeah, and they didn't ask you to pray to whoever, whatever. I said, I'm a Christian. They asked me to pray. I prayed to Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That's how I pray. So I said, you need to get over trying to push your view on everybody. He said, you pushed your view? I said, no, I was standing in the back. They came and asked me to pray. They didn't ask you to pray. Okay? If they ask you to pray, you just do it your way. And I won't come try to jam a bean up your nose afterwards. Okay? But I'm an American, and I can pray however I want, wherever I want, whenever I want. Put up Christmas decorations and sing away in a manger. I can do all those things. Now, if we don't pull our head out of the sand, we won't be able to keep doing all those things. And the problem with America is that we didn't pay attention to our forefathers, who were a group of extremely wise, and I think divinely guided men. I don't think you can get as smart as they were without God's help. We sure don't have any politicians like that today. And they built a country that we neglected, and they warned us that the price of liberty was eternal vigilance. And now we've raised a bunch of kids that graduate and can't even spell the word, much less do it. And years ago, there was a book written called Why Nations Die. Anybody ever read that book? Well, let me just give you the cliff notes here real quick. Okay.
Bro, we're toast.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't get to see all the cool pictures and stuff, but I'll just tell you what's going on up here. Okay, Jim Nelson Black, 1994, wrote a book that's called When Nations Die, 10 Warning Signs of a Culture in Crisis. Now, how many remember back in 1994? And you thought it was bad then, but it nearly looks like nirvana compared to where we are today. Okay? And listen to what he said. He studied 20 of the great civilizations of world history, which Toynbee also did in his book. But he took 10 characteristics of the demise of a nation, and he lists them out. I want to read them to you so we can check where we're at and how we got here. An increase in lawlessness throughout the culture. Now, it blows my mind. I grew up in Idaho, and my dad was a preacher and a gunsmith and a horseman. And in the culture that I grew up in, whether you were Christian or not, you didn't lie, steal, cheat, beat people up. I mean, bad things happened to folks who did that. We just have a beat-up party. Like, teach somebody how to act or how not to act. And we didn't lock our cars. I used to drive a truck to high school with a loaded 30-30 in the back window. Why shouldn't you be able to do that? And I remember when they suggested that we couldn't bring loaded rifles to school anymore. And I went home, my dad said, "Why, that is ridiculous." It is ridiculous. We've been accustomed to having our liberties taken from us, taken from us, taken from us, taken from us, to where we've gotten used to it. And that's why I wanted to entitle this talk tonight, "It's Time to Roar." I think I'll just maybe tell you some stories. And remember this, the nature of government is it always takes. It takes as much as you will allow it to take. Only the government of God is different. The government of man always eventuates in tyranny unless the people rise up and roar. Come on. And how many saw the anti-bullying campaign, the video of the fat kid that they caught on the school camera? They used it in an anti-bullying campaign until people gave them a hard time, and that this political correctness deal, it's political all right, but there's nothing correct about it. It's ridiculous. But anyway, let me tell you about the video that they caught on the school camera. There was a chubby boy, and he had been picked on and picked on and picked on, but he was a kind-hearted kid. And he was just like, "Can you just quit picking on me? Can we just work this out?" I'll tell you something about bullies. They don't respond to that. There's never been a bully that responded to somebody kindly saying, would you quit bothering me? And so this little skinny kid is, calling him names and pushing him. And the big guy came around the corner right in full view of this school camera. And he said, don't, please stop, don't. Kid's pushing him. And all of a sudden, Chubby decided this isn't working out. And he just turned around and said, I said stop it! And he grabbed that little skinny bully and picked him up and body slammed him right there on the concrete. Bam! Knocked the wind out of him, knocked all of his malicious ways out of him. And then he just hovered over him. He said, don't pick on me anymore. I'd say he made his point. I'll tell you something that happened here locally. When my kids were young, I raised 3 boys, sent them to Faith Christian for a while, and then we homeschooled them. But when my youngest boy was going to Faith Christian, he's just a little guy, and he's a good boy. Nice kid. He came home and said somebody had kicked him in the crotch. Never fun. And I said, he told me he did it. And he said, it really hurt. You don't have to go there. I know all about that. I said, you tell him to never do that again. And so he did. The kid just laughed and kicked him again. Joe came home. I said, you tell the yard supervisor. Told him she wasn't able to stop it. It happened again. Kid kicked him in the crotch 3 times in a row. I said, did you tell your homeroom teacher? He said, yeah. I said, well, I want you, when I drop you off tomorrow, I want you to go to Mr. Hamlin. He's a man. He knows all about that. Getting kicked in the crotch ain't fun thing. You go tell him that what's happening and tell him that your dad wants that stopped. So he told him. It's the 4th court of appeal, none of them working. Did I mention my dad was a boxer too? He was a preacher, gunsmith, horse-breaking, boxing kind of guy. And he taught me how to box. So anyway, Joe came home, having made every appeal. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I said, when I drop you off tomorrow, you tell this Michael kid, if you ever kick me again, I'm going to hit you in the nose. You tell him that. And then let me show you how you do that. And I showed him how to do that. And I had him practice, and I had him punch. I said, that's not going to work. You got to hit him harder than that. Anyway, he got to where he had a pretty good punch. So I said, okay, you got it down tomorrow. When you get, we're trying to avoid this, right? But bullies are bullies. So tomorrow when you get there, when I drop you off, you go straight up to him and say, if you ever kick me again, I'm going to hit you in the nose. And then he'll probably try to kick you. And then you be a man of your word. You just hit him square in the nose as hard as you can. So you do it right one time, you won't have to do it again. So do it right. And I forgot, I was down here serving God, counseling people. Got a call from Bill Hanna. He said, Pastor Bryan, we have a real problem here. I said, what's that, Bill? He said, I got your son in the office, and there's 2 problems. Number 1, he hit a boy so hard that he sent him home with the bloody nose. Mom had to go pick him up. And I hope Bill didn't hear me go, yes! I said, he did? I said, yeah. He said, but worse than that, he's lying about it. I said, Joe's an honest boy. What do you mean he's lying about it? Well, he told me you told him to do that. I said, I'll be right down. So I went down there and I said, Bill, first of all, I walked in, Joe sitting there, and I said, good job, son. Then I said, Bill, here's the deal. Your school bureaucracy was not able to handle this problem. It was an epic fail. The boy wouldn't listen. The playground teacher couldn't handle it. The homeroom teacher couldn't handle it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Joe told you this kid kept kicking him in the crotch, right? He said, yeah. He said, so you couldn't handle it. And I said, so you can thank me now, thank me later, but we handled it. I said, it's never going to happen again, not to Joe, not to anybody else. It won't happen again. And I said, you should be thanking me for solving your problem for you. And he said, well, I got to paddle Joe. I said, oh, well, that's not even on the radar screen. I said, you give him your best shot, he probably won't even feel it because he's used to me paddling. He probably won't even notice that. And he didn't, you know. But anyway, he handled it. Now, here's the deal. My son now is a trouble man for PG&E, and this other boy has been a fast friend of his ever since he sent him home with a nearly broken nose. Okay? Now, that's how you have to handle bullies. And I got news for you. Our government has become a bully government. And they push, and they foist things on you, and our government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. When's the last time you felt like the government was really helping you? Because I can't even remember. And they just kept pushing, kept trying to foist their opinions on us. They try to tell us how to raise our kids in every little detail. I'll tell you some true stories, okay, about life in GT land. I was teaching a class. We still go by the Bible here. I was teaching a class, and it tells parents how to raise their kids. And paddling is part of that. Not to provoke them to anger or abuse them in any way. Just fan their red rosy until they get over. Right? And I was teaching a class on how to do that. And I showed them my paddle from home. It was called the Persuader. I used to tell my boys, do I need to persuade you to knock that off? No. Because that Persuader, it's been witness to me swinging that Persuader. I even had a ball cap. I turned it around, dig in, do a red sheet, bam, just knocked them into the promised land. And I was teaching a class on that. And there was this CPS representative sitting in the back. And I knew because he'd come around and tried to show me his card and intimidate me before, you know. So anyway, I said, this is how the Bible teaches us to raise kids. It has worked for thousands of years. It's a good way to do it. And so I was sharing that. He was sitting back there with his arm folded. He come up afterwards. He said, well, I'm going to have to shut this class down. I said, excuse me, Robert? He said, I'm going to have to shut this class down. And I said, you and all the king's horse and all the king's men can't shut this class down. It's none of your business what we're teaching you. He said, well, it is. I'm from CPS. I said, I know that. And I said, you're supposed to help with problems, not try to get in our way as we're trying to raise our kids. He says, well, it's against California law to do what you're doing. I said, it is not. I said, you would like to make me think that, but it is not against California law. And even if it was, we'd need to change the laws, not the Bible. So he said, well, you know, he started trying to huff and puff and blow the house down. I said, Robert, I know where you live, and I know that you drop your 7-year-old girl off here to play and leave her for 4 or 5 hours at a time, so I don't think you want to mess with us. And he said, well, I thought she was safe here. I said, that's not the point. She is safe here because we know how to parent kids. The point is, you're not that great of a dad. So, I don't think you want to pursue this. And so, you know what happened? He just like saturated the place with his absence and never came back.
No big loss.
Exactly what I wanted him to do. Another time, we started a ministry called Babies Out of Bondage. And that's because the Bible says pure, undefiled religion in the sight of God is to help the fatherless and the widow in their time of need. And so, we asked ourselves, where can we find these ladies that really have broken lives and need help? And we did a lot of other things, but one of the things we did is we went to Chowchilla, which used to be exclusively a woman's prison, and we made these little flyers called Babies Out of Bondage. And we said, if you're pregnant and in prison, and you want us to, we'll meet you at the hospital with a loving family who will take your infant, love that baby, care for it like it was their own, and hold it in trust for you until you're out of prison and give it back to you with no strings attached. That's a pretty good deal. And they start signing up. We had lots and lots and lots of babies that we did that for, helped lots of people. And so out came 5 representatives from the Attorney General. And we were having a staff meeting back there, and they come marching in like they were all that in a bag of chips, so we ought to be impressed. They said, you have an illegal program going on here. See, have you noticed this separation of church and state deal? It's just like when it suits them, they'd like to be separated, and when not, they just try to lord it over us and bully us. And so I said, this has nothing to do with the government of California. This has to do with the Bible. Well, but we oversee things like that. And you have an illegal foster parenting program. I said, this is not a foster parenting program. We're just helping. We're helping widows and taking care of orphans. That's what we're doing. So really none of your business. And so have a nice day. Oh, well, we just want you to know that we're going to, if you don't stop this, we're going to fine you $1,500 per employee. We had 37 employees at the time. We're going to charge you $1,500 per employee per day from the time you started this. Well, that adds up to a whole lot of money. And I said, well, knock yourself out. Do what you think you have to do. But we didn't ask you about this. We don't pray to you. We pray to the Lord, ask God what He wanted us to do to help orphans and widows, trying to obey the Bible. And it's working out really good. Well, you're competing with the state. I said, are you kidding me right now? The state can't possibly compete with us. We do all this for free because we love these ladies. How can you compete with that? You don't have a program in the entire state that can compete with that. I said, we're not taking any money. We're not doing it because, it helps us pay for the club membership. We're doing it because we're Christians and we're trying to help these ladies out. We are not competing with them. They said, well, we are going to fine you. And I said, knock yourself out if you want to do that. I said, you might ask yourself how that's going to look. The state of California tries to shut down a church for helping pregnant women in prison. So do you think that's going to be a good headline? I don't think you want to do that. He said, are you threatening me? I said, no, I'm just explaining how dumb you will look if you pursue this course of action. It's not a threat. I'm just letting you know this isn't going to go well for you. He said, well, give me a minute. So they went back down the hall, had a little huddle. They were both saying, you think this guy is serious? Shrap serious? Anyway, he came back down and said, we'll get back to you on that, which has been 17 years ago. Still waiting for them to get back to us on that. Now, the reason I told you a few of those, and we've had a lot of those kind of stories. The last thing they did is try to get us to fence our baptismal. The whole thing's this deep and from me to you. And I said, well, we'll fence that baptismal when you fence Lake Ellis. That's ridiculous. You got a big old pond out there that's all slippery with duck poop all around it. Anybody could just slime their way down the bank. And you want us to fence our baptismal. It ain't gonna happen. And I'm waiting for them to get back to us. Now, here's the deal. The nature of bureaucratic government is they will take everything you will yield. They will keep taking. They're trying to take our kids. They're trying to dictate to our kids their morality. Don't let them do that to your kids or your grandkids. Just say no. Just do the Nancy Reagan. But listen, Americans have become lazy and apathetic and timid. And we got to get over that. And the government has pressed and pressed and pressed and pressed until we think it's their right. And once we've decided it's their right, they establish it as their right. My youngest son lived out in Hallwood. Anybody from Hallwood? Lived out in Hallwood. He called me one day. He said, hey, there's some county people out in my yard. I said, well, go ask them why. He went out there and he asked them. They said, we're checking out your well. He came back in and said, they're checking my well out. I said, did you call them and ask them to check your well out? It's a private well on private property. He said, no. I said, well, go tell them they're at the wrong house. You did not call them. You do not want them to check out your well. Just go away. They went out and they said, oh, well, they said, we're from the county. He said, I know, and this is my property. My well, my water. I don't want it checked out. Go somewhere else. Well, your neighbor wanted us to check it out. He said, well, what's that have to do with anything? The neighbor has the right to ask you to check out his well, not mine. So you're on the wrong property. Go over on my neighbor's property, check out his well. And my son called back. He says, it worked. I said, of course it works. It's your well. It's your property. There's so many things like that. I'll tell you one more story. This one's from my uncle from Arkansas. We got to talking about deer. He said, son, the state doesn't own the deer. Now, I'm not a poacher or nothing like that, but I'm just telling you a story. We were on his ranch, 450 acres. He said, let me tell you about the fish and game people. He said, they sent some young pencil-neck, zit-faced kid out here, tried to tell me what to do about the deer that was eating my alfalfa. And he said, what I've been doing is shooting them and feeding them to the coyotes in my coyote pen. He had a 450-acre coyote pen. And he said, this guy came out here and said, Mr. Newton, are you poaching deer? He says, no, I'm just shooting them and feeding them to my coyotes. He said, well, we're going to fine you. He said, fine me for what? He said, for shooting those deer. He said, are they your deer? He said, well, they're the state's deer. He said, oh, I'm really glad to know that because they've been illegally grazing my alfalfa fields for years. He said, I'm going to estimate how many deer have been illegally grazing my alfalfa fields and send you a bill. Well, you can't do that. He said, I can't do that if you own those deer. I've been wondering who owned those deer that was illegally eating my alfalfa. He said, well, you should put up higher fences. He said, they're your deer. You should put up higher fences. I don't have to fence my land to keep your illegal deer off my land. And he says, well, the state's not going to fence your whole 450 acres. He says, okay, then I'll shoot your deer and feed them to my coyotes. The guy says, well, I'm pretty sure you can't do that. He said, son, I'm pretty sure I can. I own this land, and by the way, I'm done visiting with you. You need to go somewhere else. So, he said, never heard from him again. He said, years later, I was at it was a wedding at the community. He said, a guy came up and said, Mr. Newton, do you remember me? He says, no, should I? He said, well, you threatened me and chased me off my land, your land years ago. He said, oh, I've done that to quite a few people. Which one were you? He said, well, I was game warden. He said, oh, are you still game warden? He says, no, I'm selling real estate. He said, I just wanted to thank you for helping me find a better career. He said, I went home to I was really mad at you, and I thought, we can find this guy. So he said, I went to my boss and said, Raymond Newton kicked me off of his land and told me to mind my own business, and if we didn't want those deer shot, it was up to us to keep them off his land. The guy said, well, he does have a point. He said, what do you mean he has a point? I said, well, it is his land. You know, it's kind of a gray area, and Mr. Newton, apparently it's not quite as gray for him as for others. There's nothing we can do. He just did the right thing to leave his property. He said he was so mad, he went home to his wife. He said, I can't believe it. Mr. Newton chased me off his land, and my boss said, well, he's got a point. He is the landowner. And she said, well, of course he has a point. It's his ranch. He said, I was so frustrated. I was trying to do my job. Mr. Newton poo-pooed me. My boss poo-pooed me. My wife poo-pooed me. I quit the next day. Went and got a good job doing something else. Now listen, I know when I talk like this, a lot of people think, oh, you know, you ought to cooperate more. I want you to know something. We cooperate a lot with any good thing that's happening in this community. When we were putting a well in, we called the fire department because I volunteered for years as the fire department chaplain. Never got a penny from them. Did it to help people in this community. And we called the fire department, said we're putting in a well anyway. Is there anything we can do to help the fire department? They said, well, it'd be awesome if you'd get that well deep enough and the bore big enough for us to have a place where we could fill up our trucks, put it someplace out in the middle of the parking lot where we could get to it. I said, we'll do that. Because we're good people and we want to help the community. I don't want anybody's house to burn down, barns to burn down. We put a big old fire well out there, spent thousands of dollars and did it for the community. And we've done lots and lots of other stuff. But when they come trying to bully us and just out of spite make us put a 5.5-foot fence around our little baptismal when they leave their whole lake open, that's a whole different subject. When they come out, you know what else they did? They came out here brought us a big, huge tax. I was talking to some of you know Lou Manager. He said, hey boss, they brought us a big tax. I said, well, they're not supposed to be taxing us. We're helping people. We do trauma intervention program, help the fatherless and the widow, do the teen runaway hotline, have ministries in juvenile hall, the jails and the prisons, and character counts, and on and on and on. We're helping this community. They're not supposed to be taxing us. So he said, so you want that I should not pay it? I said, yeah, don't pay it. Just take it back to him, say, I'm going to pass on that. So he did. Took it back and said, this is tax, we're not going to pay that. Oh, you have to. No, actually we don't. They said it's not a tax anyway, it's an assessment. And Lou being Lou says, you can spell it any way you want. Not going to pay it. They said, well, we're going to fine you. Not going to pay that either. We're going to do this separation of church and state here that you want so badly. So they said, well, we'll get back to you on it. So they came over with a waiver. A waiver is when the government is trying to graciously tap out of the fire. That's what a waiver is. They don't give you a waiver if they think they can bully you into paying something. They never give you a waiver. It's when they think you need to back out of this as graciously as possible. So they brought a waiver by. We talked about, we're going to give you a waiver. You just have to sign this. Lou said, I'm not signing your waiver. Signing that waiver makes you feel like you did me a favor. You didn't do me a favor. You should have never brought that by here anyway. You know that it's illegal. Not going to sign the waiver. We'll get back to you on that. They called him. Said, you don't have to sign the waiver, but can we just keep that between us? You know what? That's exactly what that means. What they were saying is like, we would hate word to get around that nobody actually has to pay us. There's 125 churches in the area. And just rather than not know. We just said, don't ever ask us to do that. Just like keep a secret little deal, like we know this is wrong, don't tell anybody about it. We don't think anybody else will call our bluff on it. It's time to roar. Now, again, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I have relatives who are police officers and good friends, all that kind of stuff. But did you realize, I'm sure you realize, that the Italians and the Russians and the Germans all had a huge segment of society that thought we just got to go along with Mussolini and Lenin, Karl Marx, and Adolf Hitler. Now, I'm a Christian, and I've spent my whole life teaching Christian leadership classes. But I know that the history of Christianity is replete with lions who stood and roared. The Cost of Discipleship, written by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was offered to be smuggled out of Germany in his day. He said, this is my land and my people. I'm going to stay and fight this evil dictator. And he was discovered in a plot to assassinate Hitler, and the Third Reich hung him. He was a courageous Christian man that stood for righteousness. So here's the deal. The apostles of Jesus Christ made it extremely clear for us to understand. when they were forbidden to tell others the good news of Jesus Christ's redemption. They said, don't tell anybody that he's the Savior. You can't do that. And they said, not going to be able to cooperate with that. Remember, Peter paid his taxes and did all kind of things. They weren't involved in just general lawlessness. But what they said in the Bible is it is better that we should obey God than man. And so we need to sort out the eternal principles of righteousness that are given to us in the Bible and in 2,000 years of Christian precedent. All the people that we call saints say that they were wonderful men and women. Down through history, a lot of them defied evil governments. William Tyndale, it used to be against the law for somebody that wasn't a priest to read the Bible. That's a bad law. And you know what you do with bad laws? You ignore them. You say, that's a bad law. Now, again, I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm in a hurry, so 65 miles an hour is a bad law. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a violation of eternal principles of God that are plain for us. It's a bad law that tries to dictate to you that you have to submit your kids to homosexual counselors. Yeah. By the way, homosexuality is not a new phenomenon. Been around for a while. But this whole idea that, we don't want you to somehow twist your kid's mind into thinking that a man and a woman ought to make a family, so we want some homosexual counselor to be mandated from the state. That's the time to roll. Just like, not going to happen. We need a bunch of people. We need a bunch of people with the courage to draw a line in the sand. Obviously, you need to do that wisely. But when a bully government is just trying to see how far they can push, how much they can take from you, it's time to draw a line in the sand. And what has happened to America is in 200 years of our history, we have lost our courage. What does a tea party mean to you? Everybody dressed up with little cute cups and their pinkies out? And the reason I bring it up is, this group is called the Tea Party. What meaneth the Tea Party? Because those boys were willing to risk their life to stand up for what they believed in. That's what America is like. So, I am a real advocate of Mr. Jefferson.
Yes.
If we fired every politician in Washington and just had him, our country would get back to greatness. But one of the things he said in his day, and we read through history, it's pretty safe to read history, not so safe to live it out. They risked everything to stand up for what they believed in. And he said that the tree of liberty must be irrigated from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Patriots and tyrants. If liberty is going to live on, patriots and tyrants will clash. And here's the good news tonight. God is on the side of the patriots. sticking to it. I don't always get to talk, but I want to encourage you to stand up and roar. And when you hear somebody else standing up and roaring, go to their side. Go to aid them. By the way, let me just, in closing, say this. This mess that we're in, from abdicating and from being cowards and being apathetic for generations, it's not going to gradually get better. We've got to do some radical things. So if you're not radical, just tuck yourself away in some safe place and watch the rest of us do something grand. And when it gets safe enough for you, come out and join us. I think this. I've been really praying about the future of America. And America, as you all know, is in deep trouble. I begin by saying, figure out your worldview, because the problem is globalists that are intentionally trying to weaken America. Intentionally trying to weaken America in favor of a global government, which was prophesied 3,500 years ago that it would happen. The good news is that it will ultimately be an epic fail. That's the good news. And it is our, again, you know, you're here for some reason. I don't know if you're a Christian, understand the Bible or not, but you don't have to be a Christian to be a lover of freedom. And this country was founded with Christian principles and liberty for all. That's why this guy that I don't like, you know, I don't believe that Jesus was sick, whatever. I mean, you know, I'll celebrate Christmas, you celebrate April Fool's Day. You know, whatever. I mean, it's America. But the point is, and let me just close by saying this, this country is an imminent threat from radical Islam. If you have not figured that out, climb out of the rabbit hole. Okay? It's no small threat. It's a huge thing. And here's the deal. Liberty and justice for all. That means I will boldly be a Christian. And if you want to boldly be an atheist, go ahead and do that. But don't give me a hard time. That's liberty and justice for all. Now, don't be trying to come out here and tear down our nativity scenes. Okay? You don't have to have one. It wouldn't be right for a Christian to go to some atheist and while he was sleeping at night, set up a nativity scene. Right? Just, he doesn't believe in it. Whatever. Let him not believe in it. And the Christian faith, we're supposed to be gracious and loving to all people. But we got some major problems with other worldviews trying to jam their religion and their culture down our throat. Now, I just want to remind you of this. The same Jesus that came as the suffering Lamb of God is coming back as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and not to be trifled with. And he showed his disciples what it was like to carry the sins of the world. But after his resurrection, do you realize the same Jesus that told him to turn the other cheek, when he came back as a lion, he said, by the way, we just kicked in the clutch and hit a new gear. If you have 2 coats, sell one and get yourself a 9mm. Yep. That's a loose paraphrase. He said, get yourself a sword. That's in red in the New Testament. It is. So you're going to need a sword. So sell your extra coat and get one. The best thing that can happen in our country is every good old boy have handguns, carry them with you, and know how to use them. Best thing that could happen. None of these terrible things that are happening are the result of good old boys having guns. It's There's all these campuses that are gun-free and all these people that, I mean, honestly, we have a virtual army out here. Just in case you've heard the rumors, they're true. But somebody comes jihading into here with a sharp knife. Heaven help the fool. Right? There's a clash between good and evil. We are mandated by the Bible, by Scripture, to not allow evil to overcome us. That's right. But instead to overcome evil. And so we need to, we've done overtime on the sheep motif, okay? We need to get some of the roar of the Lion of Judah in us. And make history. We have a chance to make history. This is how I feel about the state of Jefferson. Fitz in Washington, D.C., I think that might be intimidating to God himself. But anyway. But you know what we can do? We can say, this is our country. These are our houses and lands and children and wheat fields. And we're going to draw a line in the sand and go back to something that actually works and establish an example to bring hope to others. We can do that. The whole United States can be saved.